I don't speak these words as an armchair historian or a man caught in the romance of myth. I speak them because I walked the path, not metaphorically, but literally. I chose the ancient road, the warrior's path, the blood and bone burden that our ancestors understood intimately and that modernity has almost erased. I chose to shoulder that weight, to accept the discipline, the ritual, and the sacrifice required to ascend within a warrior caste. And I rose. Not because I was gifted, not because I had some secret key. The truth is, most men, honorable and brave in their own right, prefer to explain away that ascent. They'd say I had natural talent or luck, anything to excuse themselves from the truth. They, too, could have walked that path but chose not to. That choice has always been there, and it still is. I only claim the right to speak because I've tested these convictions under fire, in the forge of special operations among the elite of the infantry. I saw ancestral values manifest in real time. I lived among men who trained harder, suffered more, and bore greater burdens not for personal gain, but for the mission, the team, and the tribe. In them I glimpsed something ancient, a sacred brotherhood, a warrior aristocracy forged by ordeal. That experience revealed what modern minds can no longer grasp, that true authority is not granted by votes or law. It is earned in sweat and blood, through oaths and sacrifice. And it made one thing undeniable. Our ancient aristocracies were not systems of oppression. They were orders of responsibility. The men who ruled were not born to luxury, but into chains. Chains of duty, of loyalty, and of fate. They were the first to bleed and the last to feast. But this truth is now forbidden speech. The modern state, under the banners of reason and progress, has waged a silent war against the very foundation of that order. By rejecting divine law and enthroning bureaucratic decrees, it has severed man from the spiritual failsafe that once protected every healthy nation. The state is no longer a steward of the nation. It is its parasite. Bureaucracies, always secular, always self-preserving, fear any authority higher than themselves. They displace divine law because it threatens their monopoly. And now, when their own man-made laws spiral into suicide pacts, there remains no higher code to intervene. The sacred hierarchy has been exiled, its memory smeared as oppression, its wisdom forgotten. Even the faithful, those Christians who once understood the sovereignty of divine law, have grown timid. They possess the remnants of the truth, but lack the philosophical language and the will to act upon it. Yet, the ancient law, the dual code remains, buried in the blood. The two laws, rulers and the ruled. Now, let us begin. Before Christianity, before cathedrals rose where groves once stood, before monarchs knelt to the crosses rather than to the thrones of oak and bronze, there existed a separate system of value, a dual code. Among the Indo-European peoples, the ruling class, the warrior aristocracy, the priest-kings, the sacred chieftains, did not operate under the same moral framework as the farmers, herders, and tradesmen they protected. This was not oppression, it was the natural order, a hierarchy understood by every healthy society. Leadership requires a different moral architecture than the ruled. This distinction was not hidden, it was celebrated, mythologized, woven into the very stories that shaped our ancestors' world. Odin is not bound by the same rules as a mortal man. Achilles may slaughter, deceive, and defy, but he is still hailed as a hero. Because the divine right to rule was never a matter of democratic virtue. It was a matter of cosmic burden. Myth made this clear. The ruler lives closer to the gods and further from comfort. Our ancestors pursued virtue, not virtue signaling. They built good habits, not endless laws. The moral compass was not imposed, it was inherited. The common folk did not envy the rulers. The king was not the wealthiest man in the tribe. He was the most burdened, bound by fate, duty, and blood oaths to land and lineage. Modern minds, poisoned by post-Enlightenment ideology, cannot grasp this. They have been told monarchy was tyranny, that kings were oppressors. But this is revisionism. Propaganda spread after the deliberate destruction of monarchy across Europe. Not because monarchies failed, but because they succeeded too well. Monarchies were strongholds. They preserved a sacred order, one that bound blood to soil, myth to memory, man to the divine. For that they were destroyed. Under the banners of liberty, reason, and progress, crowns were toppled. In their place, bureaucracies and plastic ideals. An enlightened age that delivered only debt, dependency, and decay. The root of this collapse was planted earlier with the Christianization of the rulers. When rulers and ruled bowed to the same universal God, the ancient separation of moral codes was erased. The king became a shepherd, not a sovereign. A noble instinct, but a civilizational trap. When the ruled demanded their rulers obey the same laws even into oblivion, the rulers obeyed. To my Christian audience, just know this is not hostility. It's a diagnosis. Early Christianity shielded our ancestors from bureaucratic empire's worst excesses. But it also leveled the warrior aristocracy. The lion lay down with the lamb and the wolves arrived. Even the church once tried to preserve the duality with the doctrine of the two swords. But the deeper Indo-European separation, a code for rulers distinct from that of the ruled, was gone. Modern states inherited this flattening instinct. They rejected divine law entirely, replacing sacred hierarchy with bureaucratic decree. The nation, a people bound by blood, culture, language, and often shared faith, became enslaved to the state, an apparatus loyal only to itself. Bureaucracies always choose atheism, always favor man-made law. Their power depends on severing the spiritual lifeline connecting ruler and ruled to the transcendent. Even today, Christians sense this. They know divine law must override suicidal man-made laws, but their theology has been pacified. Yet, the ancient law, the dual code, remains, buried in the blood. Our ancestors understood when state laws become corrupt, rulers must defy them. When bureaucracy sacrifices the nation to ideology, the warrior aristocracy must reset the order. That was kingship's sacred function, not rule, but ritual renewal. The king did not hoard wealth or power. That is the vice of Eastern despotisms. In the West, kingship was born of the hunt. The king led the hunt, but did not hunt alone. Leadership was never dominance, it was service through sacrifice. The ruler bled first and feasted last. That ethos must return. The sacred aristocracy will rise again, not through ballots or committees, but when men worthy of the burden rise to claim it. No serious man denies that some Indo-European monarchs failed. But the worst failures came only after the warrior kings became administrators of a universal faith. Before that watershed, royal bloodlines were bound by duty, myth, and ancestral understanding. Kings were priests of war, stewards of the land, judges of fate. Their treasure symbolized victory and unity, not hoarded riches. But as kings bowed to a god who erased tribal distinctions, glory became economics. The tribe became a ledger, the throne an accounting desk. Even now, this instinct survives. Today, citizens mistrust politicians, CEOs, judges, even modern monarchs. But they respect warriors. Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, 22 SAS, KSK Commando. They feel reverence, not contempt. Why? Because these warriors bear burdens the average man will never face. They do not scheme for profit. They bleed so others do not have to. This is the echo of the old pact between commoners and sacred aristocracy. One defends, one feeds. Mutual respect, different codes. Reciprocity. The warrior caste still holds that trust. It is the living memory of the ancient relationship between ruler and ruled. But where are today's kings? Europe's royal houses are hollow crowns, costumed relics without weight or authority, curators of their own extinction. When the Herios return, they will not restore these broken bloodlines. They will dissolve them. The regalia of rule belongs to the sons of Wotan, the fire-bearers, sword-handed guardians. Royal wealth was never for the king's vanity. It reflected the people's glory, just as cathedrals reflect the devotion of the faithful. Modernity has twisted obligation into sin, shamed duty, labeled honor as arrogance, but the truth remains. The age of reason taught equality. The age of the Herios will remind us some are responsible not by choice, but by destiny. The hollow crowns will fall, sacred steel will rise, sons of Wotan will lead, not above the people, but for them. The tribal flame bearers, living the burden the world tried to bury. The true aristocrat, the Herios, did not inherit pleasure. He inherited sacrificial duty, standing not above but in front of his tribe, sword and oath alike. Though the world tried to bury this order, it lives, not in law books, not in politics, but in blood. Even now, our best warriors live by its echoes. They bleed first and feast last. They carry the curse of command. They bear the burden so others may sleep in peace. The West still trusts its warriors, and soon it will trust its kings again. Leadership was never privilege. It was standing between the tribe and the abyss. The return of the king will not wait for permission. The war bands are forming, the banners are being sown, the ancestors call, not from heaven but from the blood in your veins. Rise, the Herios king awaits. The hollow crowns are already falling. Until next time.